I can think of a number of franchises that have zero misses in its mainline games. Silver Chronicles, the 3D Mario games. What about the Dead Rising series? If we pretend 4 didn't exist. I wish I could. What about the Mega Man Zero series? And I'm happy to say, Pikmin has continued the trend of making a 10 out of 10 game once again.
You know, we Pikmin fans have to suffer a curse of having to wait 10 years for a new mainline game to release. But even then, the Pikmin series is so top-notch, so high quality that when we get a new entry it makes us say, the wait was so worth it. And as a longtime Pikmin fan I can tell you, Pikmin 4 has hit that high bar once again. I don't even know where to begin with this entry. Just like all the other games in the franchise, this one also stands up on its own. It has so many unique qualities and ideas without losing that identity of what makes the Pikmin series so different and special. With that, I mean that if you have played any Pikmin game beforehand, then you know exactly what you're getting into. But in case you don't know what a Pikmin is and why it is a peak Nintendo franchise, then you can check out my video conveniently called Why Pikmin is a Peak Nintendo Franchise. So, what makes 4 stand out from the rest of the series? If I had to point out the most important new mechanic in the game, that will no doubt be your new dog companion, Oatchi. This was one of the biggest focuses during marketing, and for good reason. Oatchi is one of the most important components of Pikmin 4. In the simplest of terms, I wanna say this dog is like an all-terrain vehicle, but is also a super Pikmin who can do almost anything. Oatchi is extremely versatile. He can dash, stun enemies, carry all your Pikmin squad to move over water bodies, and as the game progresses, he gets even better! He can acquire the strength of 100 Pikmin, become immune to fire, electricity, poison, and many other hazards. And he also has many useful commands such as going to different places, gather Pikmin, block them for the ground, and much more. Now, not gonna lie, I was a bit unsure about this dog mechanic because I thought Oatchi being super flexible will make most Pikmin obsolete, while also making the game incredibly easy. But to my surprise, that is not the case! In fact, if there's one thing I really have to praise about Pikmin 4, is how it makes all of its mechanics matter and how its challenge gets progressively more engaging. Just like previous games, all Pikmin types are relevant and all of them are very useful for different situations. But I feel that Pikmin 4 made all of them even more important. For example, having red ones is still great for combat and fire hazards, but said fire hazards as well as fire enemies are way more common now. They even introduce lava floors that only red Pikmin are able to destroy, so this gives you a much better incentive to use them. Purple and white Pikmin are back, but this time they're actually used through all the main story instead of just being relegated to a challenge mode like in Pikmin 3. And same thing with rock and wing Pikmin, they are just as important as they were in the previous game. And of course, Pikmin 4 gives a ton of spotlight to its new creatures, the Ice and Glow Pikmin. Pikmin 4 will give you the necessary resources to overcome challenges in fun and creative ways. These challenges are also much more memorable thanks to one thing: the return of the caves from Pikmin 2. Easily one of the hypest comebacks for me because, well, some of you know I'm a huge sucker for Pikmin 2, so yeah, I was super happy for this. So what Pikmin 4 does is that every time you enter a cave, or depending on the open area you're in, you'll always get suggested specific colors of Pikmin, all according to the type of hazards and obstacles you'll come across. Unlike Pikmin 2, however, where some sub-levels in the caves were randomly generated, 4 opts to make every cave, every sub-level have a specific design. But I think this works to the game's favor because again, all puzzles and challenges were designed while taking in mind the types of Pikmin you're supposed to take with you, making them more memorable. And here's another bizarre, yet interesting change that Pikmin 4 made to the formula. So typically in all games previous to this one, you could always take any color of Pikmin you wanted as long as you didn't surpass the limit of 100. Well, in 4, when you start the game, you can only take 20 Pikmin on the field at the same time, a limit that you can increase as you collect these items called floor licks. But even more interesting is that you can only take 3 types of Pikmin out at the same time, Again, these limitations are a plethora of interesting challenges, forcing you to explore every nook and cranny, while also being more mindful of the types of Pikmin you should take with you. And it makes it easier for newcomers to dive in, as they don't have to overthink what types of Pikmin they should bring, cause let's be honest, even for a professional player it might be a bit too much to organize 8 types of Pikmin at once. As you progress, you gain more skills, upgrades, Pikmin types, and Oatchi becomes better. But at the same time, enemies become more aggressive, the puzzles get trickier, and the challenges continue to escalate in difficulty. But I genuinely like that! There's even the inclusion of the new night expeditions, which work as some sort of pseudo-tower defense game, in which you must protect these things called luminals from aggressive monsters with the help of the new glow Pikmin. But honestly, I think my favorite part about this game had to be the Dandori challenges and battles. What are these, you may ask? If you have played the challenge mode or the bingo battles from Pikmin 3, then you might have a good idea of what to expect. The Dandori battles involve you competing against an opponent where both of you must gather points by collecting treasures and enemies, all while constantly screwing up against one another. The Dandori challenges are caves where you have a set amount of Pikmin and you must collect all treasures and enemy corpses before time runs out. But what makes the Dandori challenges so special is that your resources are limited. The Pikmin numbers, their colors, and the items you get are all predefined, so you must rely on your multitasking skills to overcome the maps, or even better, score a platinum medal! Remember what I said earlier, that I was worried that Oatchi will get so powerful that he could make the entire game extremely easy? Well, these levels prove that is not the case. He becomes an extra useful tool that you must learn to use wisely. These levels are so tense, challenging, yet extremely rewarding to complete. They embody what makes the Pikmin series so fun. In fact, that's the best way to describe this game. It's so much fun to play. It is insane how polished it is, and how much content it has. For better or worse. Actually, yeah, let me get that out of the way. Pikmin 4 is long. Very, very long. If you thought Pikmin 2 was the longest game in the franchise, it pales in comparison to how much time it'll take you to 100% Pikmin 4. Just when you think you're about to end it, it just keeps going, and going. And I'm kinda mixed on this because Pikmin 4 is a game that starts out incredibly simple. So simple in fact that at times I will find it a bit boring since, you know, there's not much to do and you're bombarded with tutorials. But once I started to get more Pikmin and the challenge will constantly increase, I found myself enjoying it so much. But the more the game continued, the more I started to feel a bit burnt out. Maybe it's because Pikmin 3 was one of the last games I played before leaving Mexico, so my experience was a bit recent, but still, Pikmin 4 is very damn long! It took me 28 hours to fully complete this game, but take in mind, I've been playing Pikmin since I was a pre-teen, so I have experience with the gameplay. I've seen tons of friends and people online who spent over 40 hours on this game. That might be a bit overwhelming to some people. And it's funny because, even with that, I still think Pikmin 4 has great qualities that make it a good entry point for newcomers. And that is mostly because of how accessible it is and how many quality of life features it has. Yeah, I found the tutorials and pacing at the beginning of the game a bit obnoxious, but again, that's because I've been playing these games for years, but I can't deny that they are very helpful for those who want to give Pikmin a shot. And even then, 4 also introduces so many convenient features, such as gadgets that instantly call your idle Pikmin. It is very difficult to lose Pikmin in a sunset thanks to this. The rewind time feature now goes between checkpoints instead of days, so you don't have to restart your console or start a new day all over again if you make a massive mistake. There's now tons of items that give you a huge advantage in battle, and that's not even mentioning how easy it is to stack up on spicy spray in this game. Honestly, if you wanna get into Pikmin, your best options to do so are 1, just so you can see how the franchise continues to evolve, or 4, because of how accessible it is. Personally though, I will still say you should start with 1, and I have a good reason for that. Pikmin 4 explodes with fan service. It's insane! Like, make no mistake, this game can stand up on its own perfectly fine. But any person who has played any of the previous entries will no doubt notice all the cool nods and callbacks, from Easter eggs, musical cues, dialogue, how the caves reference previous dungeons from Pikmin 2, iconic moments and challenges, and then there's the crazy amount of enemies this game has. I don't want to spoil the surprises, but I'll just put it like this. Almost everyone is here, it's cathartic! And no, I'm dead serious! You can't imagine the amount of times I will get excited just because I will see an obscure Pikmin enemy make a return. Do you ever see how Monster Hunter fans tend to go, "Yo, no way, Shopless Kulup is making a return in the new game"? That was me with Pikmin 4! And of course, you have the return of the iconic Piclopedia, where you have different characters comment on the treasures and creatures you find throughout the game, adding a ton of flavor text that is so much fun to read. The amount of fanservice in this game was pure ecstasy to me. However, does that mean that Pikmin 4 is a perfect game? Well, for the most part, yes, but I still have a few gripes with it, and my main issue with it is the control scheme. It is like a simplified version of previous gameplay styles, but I don't think it works very well. So in past games, you have your reticle you can aim with your control stick or the Wiimote, right? So in Pikmin 4, your reticle automatically aims to the closest target. And I think you know where this is going. The lock-on system is so unreliable and awkward to use, because when you have many targets together, something that happens very often, you find yourself struggling to throw Pikmin where you want them to land, and even then, there's a high chance their AI will make them go towards an objective you didn't want them to go. There are ways to manipulate the reticle, sure, but I don't think it is intuitive in the slightest. I honestly hate this change, cause throwing Pikmin was perfectly fine in previous games. Hell, Pikmin 3 had a more than functional lock-on system that you could use on your free will. 4 was basically trying to fix something that wasn't broken in the first place, and it only made it worse. Also, here's a nitpick I wanna mention. I honestly hate how the game forces you to stop throwing Pikmin when you reach the minimum strength requirement. That was never an issue in previous games. If I wanted to throw 20 Pikmin at an object that weighs 10 units because I want them to go faster, that was my choice, you know. I didn't have to awkwardly wait a few seconds before being able to throw more. The pacing of the game can also be very slow during the first few hours. Yeah, I mentioned this already. And I understand the importance of tutorials and exposition, but this was the first time a Pikmin game ever made me say, "God, shut up so I can get a move on." Actually, speaking of that, that's another complaint I have, but I really wish the characters would just shut up at times. Like, okay, for things such as Pikmin dying or tasks being completed off screen, that's fine, Pikmin 3 also did that and it wasn't annoying. But these characters just have to comment on the most obvious stuff all the time. Like, yeah, I know my Pikmin are burning and I have to use my whistle on them. You can stop saying that every single time that happens. The worst example of this are the Dandori challenges. It's just the same 10 lines of dialogue over and over and over and over and over. The first few times, yeah, they're funny. After 5 Dandori challenges, you just learn to hit on the leaf links. Also, I don't know if this is just me, but can I say that I found the presentation of the game a bit lacking? I found some of the menus a bit sterile at times, and gathering treasures or collecting important parts doesn't feel as satisfying as previous games. Cause say, in Pikmin 1, when you collect a ship part and see the dolphin get slowly repaired, that is rewarding. In Pikmin 2, when you get a treasure and get to see a 3D model of it, that is very satisfying. Even Pikmin 3 has you being able to see the fruits you collected at the end of the day, and squeeze them into juice. Pikmin 4 doesn't have much of that, like, I get why. There are so many things to collect in this game that seeing each one individually will make the pacing even slower. But I don't think it would have hurt to give more exposition to, like, say, treasures from bosses or Nintendo exclusive items. Just to set an example. Also, damn! I was also a bit upset when I found out the final floor of each cave doesn't have that dun 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 jingle anymore from Pikmin 2. A small thing, I know, but sometimes the little things can make a huge difference. However, these presentation complaints do not apply to the graphics department. This was super obvious since the first trailer, but Pikmin 4 looks beyond gorgeous. Each area is so pretty and distinct from one another. The level design is beyond creative, and I love how all areas feel even more natural than ever before. The soundtrack doesn't leave much to talk about. I mostly remember tracks from previous games or original songs that had segments from past areas. And the final boss theme too. I won't show it, but it's so damn good, you guys have to experience it. In the end, while Pikmin 4 is not a perfect game by any means, it's still so damn good! It retains that 10 out of 10 status from its predecessors. Yeah, I know that sounds contradictory, but for me, a perfect game is a 12 out of 10. Like Lost Judgment. God, you guys have to play Lost Judgment. But still, Pikmin 4 succeeds in what makes a Pikmin game so special. It is incredibly fun, memorable, satisfying, has a ton of cool moments, and the micromanagement is at its peak just like all previous entries. But most importantly, it still manages to stand out on its own. This is pretty much what I said on my previous Pikmin video, but if you ever tell me that Pikmin 1, 2, 3 or 4 is your favorite, I can totally understand why. Every single Pikmin game is special in their own way, and each will no doubt hit that soft spot for you depending on your preferences. For me, Pikmin 4 is like a cornucopia that has some of the best qualities of its predecessors. Sure, it may not be as fast-paced as 1, nor as rewarding as 2 in terms of collecting treasure, or the strategic element is not as tight as in Pikmin 3, but many of those aspects are still there, they're well done, and besides, Pikmin 4 also has new Pikmin types and that dog that brings a ton of fun ideas other games can hope to replicate.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that play this series. Just play it. Pikmin might look bizarre at first glance, and its gameplay might seem a bit too overwhelming to some people, but it's just as I said the last time I made a Pikmin video. This is a game franchise that is so unique that I just can't compare it to anything else, and I mean that in the most positive way I can express it. Yeah, sure, we might have to wait another 10 years in the joint for another game to release, but if it's just as good as the other games in the series, I'll honestly take that over something like Pokemon shitting something mediocre every year, just to set up an example. So what's the lesson in all of this? That next time Shigeru Miyamoto says a game is very close to completion, then that means we only have to wait 8 extra years. Hey, it's finally good to have some reference in that.